Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are in this cryptoverse. It's great to have such a great number of speakers here talking about Cardano real world impact. And we're going to be exploring innovative projects with social and environmental and sort of economic impact goals realistically, as well as running their projects. As we know, Cardano has been contributing to many social and environmental impact projects that aim to benefit communities and causes around the world. It's also partnered with several organizations and local governments to promote sustainability, environmental causes, and the use of blockchain technology for social and economic development. So Cardano's really contributions to these projects demonstrate its commitment, I suppose, to using blockchain technology for the betterment of society. As the sort of layer one continues to grow and develop, it's likely that it will continue to seek out and support projects that promote positive social and environmental outcomes. This ethos is great to see that is being embraced by some of the projects built on Cardano or supporting the base infrastructure of the chain. And really the aim today is to highlight some of these remarkable projects, take a look at their contributions to these real world and important charity causes and good causes. So without further ado, let's start off with introductions. And the first panel speaker I see is Cardano Tree. So please just introduce yourself, your project, and we'll go like this.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. Well, I am Damian, the creator of Cardano Trees. Basically, Cardano Trees is an artistic NFT project that trying to create awareness about the trees and the good impact that the trees make for our world. And like an NFT project, we try to have an impact in the real world too, donating trees based on the NFTs minted. Up to now, we already donated more than 18,000 trees. And we have different pillars. One is the art. We create like a forest inside Cardano because our NFTs are full on chain. It's like we have forever a forest growing and evolving inside the Cardano blockchain. We have the other pillar about ecology, like the tree donation and awareness, and the idea to emphasize the importance of trees in our world. We have other pillar that is education because we made already some videos and some teaching sessions about how to create this kind of art with kind of generative art and how made in a way that you can combine different NFTs and different things. In the future, we add more classes or more videos about that. And yeah, more or less that's the whole idea of the project. We try to grow in the future more and trying to generate new things.
Fantastic. 18,000 trees. Wow, that's quite amazing. And having live art on the wall and also obviously as an NFT, that's very innovative. Thank you for that. Let's go to
Yeah.
Ada for Good.
Hey, Karen.
Hey.
Thanks for having me. Thank you, WingRiders, for organizing this great space. Honored to be honored to be here, and very happy that you guys are shining spotlight on projects that are doing some good or trying to do some good, besides, of course, building and providing value. So, yeah, we are. I'm not even sure if you can say that we are a project. Ada for Good is a Cardano community stake pool. And so our basic task is to mint blocks and to make sure that our delegators get their ADA rewards. But what make us a bit different is that we use a portion of the ADA rewards with consent of our delegators, and we donate that to a good cause. For us, that's an organization that's called Kumwel Hub. It's part of Save the Children, and it's based in Rwanda. And our mission is to help children, and that's exactly what Kumra Hub does. And currently, we have been here for around 2 years. We started very small, and still we have donated about 27,000 ADA already. And the nice thing about Kumwa Hub is that actually, I don't really believe in just giving money or providing food and things like that. The thing that I like about Combo Hub is that they help in a sustainable way by giving loans and grants to local grassroots communities and businesses. So in that way, the local businesses that are specialized in helping children, which fits our cause, of course, they can continue to give more. So it's not just giving ADA and that it's gone, but it's a way to also to grow the community.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to do it. 27,000 ADA, and it's not just like it's handouts, but actually it's kind of seeding these communities to kind of grow and help themselves. Thank you very much for that. Empower.
Hey everyone, it's Greg here from Empower. So, if you're not familiar with our project, we're a real fire project that's focused on delivering affordable housing across the African continent. We set ourselves up to really be earn with impact. So, we reward those who support the project, but are also focused on trying to make the biggest impact we can. Just to give some context into the type of problem we're trying to solve, our first pilot projects have been in Mozambique, and Mozambique is a country of 31 million people. But before we entered the market, there were only 600 home loans. And there's a number of reasons for that. But in short, the average interest rate on a home loan in Mozambique was 25%. So you can imagine for the vast majority of people, owning their home is unattainable. And that results in them having to live in very poor living conditions, often without running water, without electricity, without sanitation, and being forced to try and save up to buy their homes in cash or to try and self build their house. In both cases, it's a less than ideal outcome because if you have to save up to buy your house, in many cases, you aren't able to own your home until you're 40, 50, and you have to live in quite poor conditions up until that point. And if you self build your house, that's often done in a way that's not environmentally friendly and also is not climate smart. And sadly, Mozambique is one of the most climate impacted places on the continent, but also in the world. And so cyclones blow through Mozambique almost annually. And so when a poorly built, self-built home is hit by a cyclone, you can imagine not only is the house destroyed, but so is the person's or their belongings. So what Empower does is we offer lease to own contracts where tenants are able to lease their home and pay off the house over a 10-year period, and at the end of it, own the asset, own their home. And we use the Cardano blockchain in a number of ways to monitor, manage, and move funds associated with that. But that's just a kind of brief intro. So our success to date includes increasing the home loan market in Mozambique by 5%, signing a partnership with the local government in Beira, Mozambique, and the Dutch government to ultimately deliver a further 25,000 homes, and most recently announcing a partnership in Nigeria, which will be the next market we move into.
Wow, that is very impactful. I mean, when you said 25% interest rates, I mean, that's absolutely extortionate, I think, by any measure, especially in a country that um, people are probably, in terms of wages and things, much way below kind of any kind of standard that we know. And to build 600 giving away 600 home loans, that's quite amazing. We'll come back to you actually, just to give us a little bit more detail, and we'll go around really to see, what other sort of other impacts. Give us some more details about this kind of loan and how it works, and sort of give us a kind of vision of how it looks to someone. If I'm from Mozambique, how do I take these loans? Give us a little bit more detail, please.
Absolutely. So just to quickly clarify, the 600 home loans, that was not how many we've issued, that is how many existed in the entire country before we entered the market. So in a
Oh,
country
wow.
of 31 million people, there were only 600 active home loans, which is a crazy concept.
Crazy. Yeah.
Um, as far as how does one apply for an Empower home, it's important to know that we aren't focused on housing the homeless. We're really looking at the urban working poor. So in countries like Mozambique, there will be teachers, nurses, policemen who in many other countries would have a reasonable home, but in a place like Mozambique will literally live in a house with no running water, no electricity, and no sanitation. So we partner with local service providers. We believe critically that we need to use grassroots developers. I myself am originally South African, but now I live in the Netherlands, and I've seen too many failed projects where people from developed markets fly in and try and come with, ideas on how to solve local challenges. So we partner with a local development partner. They're responsible for the construction of the homes. The loan is issued to that development partner, who in turn extends the credit to their tenants through a lease to own. So they will, in partnership with us, will collect applications, will evaluate whether they're a suitable candidate, and ultimately will provide them with a lease to own contract. What that means is the tenant moves in, they pay a minimum monthly rent, and over the course of the 10-year period can make ad hoc payments to pay off the equity in the home, the cost of the house. Now, the cost of the house prior to our entry into the market in Mozambique was $55,000. We've been able to get that down to $10,000. And so by allowing a tenant to pay off that home, a reasonably priced home with a reasonable interest rate, they're set on a journey to ultimately own that house. And by making the payments ad hoc, what we appreciate is the realities of how people in developing markets earn an income. Most of that income is informal, it's quite lumpy in nature, often with spikes around maybe tourist season or harvest, for example. So when they do have extra capital, they can put that into the house. When they don't, there's no expectation that they make a payment as long as they're making that minimum monthly rental payment. So that's quite important. And quite recently, we announced the development of EmpowerPay. That's still in test, but will hopefully go live in the coming weeks. And that's an application we've developed to record those tenant payments onto the blockchain and to obviously leverage the power of having a decentralized, immutable record of tenant payments. It increases transparency in our project. It allows us to leverage smart contracts to better move funds. So that creates quite a lot of cost saving. And ultimately, when we combine those records of payment with something like a digital identity, we start to build up for the first time a credit worthiness score for those in the developing market who can, and we hope that other financial providers will look at that and say, well, this tenant has had 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years of steady payment towards their home. Their credit worthiness you know, is high, and therefore we can help them with other financial services that they've previously been excluded from.
Wow, you guys have been busy, right? I mean, there's so many things going on. Reducing I think the cost of homes from 55 to 10,000. That's amazing. People paying by kind of ability. That's amazing. So pay as you earn and you have abilities. I think that's really good, and really not looking at people's credit scores. That's also really great. Looking at their real track record, I think that's also something that's really kind of cutting edge. And then obviously utilizing the blockchain for putting those sort of deeds or whatever onto the blockchain that's immutable, and that's what a blockchain is made for. But yeah, thank you very much for that. That's a lot to do. Great. Ada for Good, you tell us a little bit more about your sort of project contributions and in terms of sort of helping the charity, which is connected to children.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, really impressive, by the way, Greg. The work that you guys are doing is really, really nice. Yeah, well, we are, as I said, we're just a small stake pool. Well, we are no longer a small stake pool, but still just one. So the actual impact that we can have is, of course, pretty much limited. But I think the most important thing for us is that I've been trying to create awareness and to inspire people how you can make small impacts that add up if you do it together to a huge impact on lives of others. And so I think that's the biggest contribution of Ada for Good stake pool, by creating pretty significant community alongside that is believing in this method. And I think that if more stake pools and other projects just give a little, it will add up to a huge amount that can help. And if you do it in a sustainable way, helping businesses. That would even be better. And that said, Kumba Hub does have a lot of actual real situation and businesses. You can go to their website kumbahub.com and look up all the businesses they have helped. For example, there was recently a company that was funded by Kumba Hub, and they built an app that children that could not afford schools or did not have all the time, they could still learn and speak and read at home. And they also helped a lot of daycare centers so that women could go and work and their children could also be taken care of. So those are some examples, but you can see a lot more on their website.
Amazing, Vahid. I mean, my hair, back of my hair was tingling really there. I mean, it's a very, I think, important area. Children, families being able to obviously go and work, and then sort of children being able to go to school. Education, as we know, is probably the foundation of success in many ways. And then, the way this organization that you're contributing, Kumba Hub, .com is kind of contributing, and what you said early on, I think, kind of really touched me, that a little bit goes a long way, right? If everyone had this mentality, I think the world would be a better place. And thank you for your contribution to what you're doing. Thank you. Cardano trees, tell us a little bit more. What inspired you to plant trees, and why are you obsessed about trees? We love to know.
Yeah, well, as I already said, the idea of the project was not only make an NFT project with the artistic leg. We try to have some impact in real world. At that moment, we have the idea of create NFT that evolves in time. Then we have the idea of the trees because Cardano is a lower consumption blockchain, and then something that evolves and can have impact in real world. With that in mind, I decide to make art related to trees. And well, to have that impact, we donated trees. Basically, at that moment when the project was launched in 2021, we was in contact with Cardano Foundation too. We was part of the first Cardano Foundation impact challenge that was the Cardano Forest. I made the art that people receive through the donation of ADA to that cause. And at that moment, we partner with Berry Tree to make the plant or to plant the real trees in Africa. Well, the idea was that related to planting trees, and then later we try to add more things like education and trying to educate about blockchain, about art, about everything. And for now, we like says we up to now we donate more than 8,000 trees, but we try to continue with that, making new things and trying to have more impact. But the main idea is trying to create awareness about the trees, their impact on the ecosystem, and showing that it's possible to make a project, an art-related project, an NFT that have something in real life too. Because at that moment there wasn't something like this. Maybe now there later was some project that create things and trying to have impact on real life too. But at the moment there wasn't something like that, and that was the idea initially.
Fantastic, fantastic. I mean, when we think about trees, we have to think about obviously ecology. This is an area that's very kind of close to the heart of the WingRiders project as well. We're committed to a 3% kind of our tokenomics to sort of projects that will be helping sort of the ecology and the natural world. So we completely understand, obviously, trees and the natural environment keeps us all kind of alive, if you like. And then we've got obviously ADA for Good and Empower, kind of enabling humans to actually function as they should when they don't have the power to do so. So that's absolutely. So thank you for that round. I think we've kind of covered the kind of motivations, but my next question is really, why did you choose Cardano to build your project on from all the other obviously layer ones, and what are the benefits over the other layer ones, if any? Let's start off with yourself, Cardano Trees. Why did you decide to build on Cardano? Are there any special benefits in building on Cardano that you think overrides everything?
Yeah, no, at that moment I really like Cardano because different things. One for sure was the low impact in power consumption that Cardano has. Another interesting thing for me was the peer review process that Cardano made to evolve and create new things, because I have a background in R&D, and then that kind of path I really like it. And another thing was basically that NFTs in Cardano are native tokens. I think it's really interesting that how NFTs are made and are using inside Cardano. And then based on all that things, I try to make something like a poetical thing that because of that I decide to make it full on chain, because I try to create something real inside Cardano, something that will grow there forever. I think it's a really good place to have a forest growing inside the blockchain that is really a low power consumption, and is created taking into account that part of the equation that maybe other layer one have not that in consideration.
Fantastic. Yeah, absolutely. Sustainability is obviously one thing, and this power consumption, and obviously being a POS rather than a proof of work is a big thing. Sustainability is very important. Thank you for that. Let's go to Ada for Good for the same thing.
Yeah, actually, there's a pretty simple question for us, I would say. I think many agree that if you are looking across all the different blockchains that are out there, I don't know any other than Cardano that has such a great ethos, and it finds it important to connect the unconnected, to bank the unbanked, it has an Africa vision. So it's clearly a blockchain that has gathered a community that is like-minded in that sense. And a lot of people in Cardano are here to help better the world. So it was pretty obvious for me to start building on Cardano. And what we built, of course, is nothing technical really, but it's building the community and making our impact.
Great, thank you very much for that, Ray. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think when we started, I kind of highlighted that Cardano is really kind of motivated by banking the unbanked and helping governments to use blockchain and betterment of the world. So it makes sense. Yeah, Empower. Same question, please.
Yeah, I think some of the reasons that some of the other speakers spoke about, for us, we're trying to build homes that are sensitive to the environment, so environmentally sustainable, and Cardano's credentials in that space were obviously a consideration. But I think for us, the focus on Africa was a big one. With IOG really trying to make inroads on the continent, it seemed to align ourselves with a blockchain that saw the potential in Africa would make sense. And also the community. We started working on this project over 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, where we had to decide which technical solution we would go with. And at that time, it was really hard to find a community that valued a project that was building for the long term, that was focused on making real world impact, and was not only about, when, moon, and how to get the token price to pump as quickly as possible, but really building something that was sustainable as a business, and sustainable in the impact that it could make. So yeah, really those three things kind of came together to help us decide to vote on Cardano, and we're really glad with our decision. That faith that we put in the community has really been rewarded through things like the Catalyst funding we received, and just in general the love that the community has shown us.
Yep, so that's very interesting. So I think what I got from your three replies is that it's the ethos, the profile of Cardano, and really kind of getting stuck in there from the beginning to try to really help different types of causes. But what's emerged to me is actually very interesting, and I've never actually figured that out. Why Africa? We all know, obviously, we have a great resource of humans there, a lot of great resource of natural kind of resources, but obviously economically perhaps not in the best position. But also there are other parts of the world you could think of, for instance, parts of Asia, for instance, Bangladesh, parts of India, or even the Far East, maybe the Philippines. Why do we think Cardano is really kind of focusing in on Africa? This is a really open question to anyone, so anyone who wants to jump in there, please do.
I mean, I can take a first step. So, it is true that there's a lot of developing markets where there's plenty of potential. I think when you look at the stats around Africa, it's the fastest growing continent, it's the youngest continent, and in a world that's gradually aging, that's a really exciting opportunity. But I think what is also the reality is many of the kind of traditional systems across the continent are broken. And that means that they're ripe for disruption, they're ripe for innovation. I saw it growing up in South Africa that we would often leapfrog certain technologies. So we wouldn't have something, and then something else would come in the interim, and it would just never have made it there. And then we would get whatever the latest uh, execution was. A bit of a frivolous example was, mini disc players, which maybe some people on this call recall. Those never came to South Africa. We had, the usual disc Walkman, and then we had iPods, and it just was that technology wasn't around for long enough to actually make it down to the tip of Africa, and we just leapfrogged. And we've seen that to some extent with fiber internet across the continent. The World Mobile team can speak to this in a lot more detail, I'm sure, but many places are just jumping straight to 5G because installing the fiber just took too long and technologies surpassed that. So I think um, growth in any developing market is important for the Cardano ecosystem. But I think the Africa example is an interesting one because of the potential and because of the need for technology to disrupt. And the final thing I'll say on that, just to illustrate the point as an example, when we financed our first set of homes in Beira in Mozambique, we sent the funds needed using the Cardano blockchain, and we had that offloaded and in our developer's bank account within 3 days. Another uh, project partner who's a bit more traditional in their approach sent a similar amount of money through the banking system, the traditional banking system, and it took 6 months for the money to clear the Central Bank of Mozambique and land up in our developer's bank account. So I don't need to labor the point, but anyone listening in knows that getting money in 3 days versus 6 months, fundamentally changes the success of any project. And so that's just a good example of how broken some systems are and how easily we can make an impact with blockchain technology. And I think for some who've maybe grown up in developed markets, you may say, well, sending payments, I can send payments using the SEPIA approach um, in Europe, or my money clears within a few hours or immediately across developed markets. Well, that's not really the case. I mean, even in South Africa, it can take 2 to 3 days sometimes for a payment to clear. So there's really great opportunities to make significant impact with this new technology. So that's at least why I think Africa is an interesting proposition for something like Cardano.
Wow, that's very comprehensive. Guys, anyone else want to jump in there?
I think Greg basically fully nailed it there. I would say exactly the same thing. So it's the age of the continent, and also because they don't have the many technologies, it's easier to adapt all these new technologies. So, and also as Greg said, um, it's it doesn't make sense to use DeFi as much or all the financial services as much if you already have all these modern technologies, financial instruments which we have in the West. So if you lack a lot of stuff like even having a bank account or not being able to get a decent loan for less than 50% interest, that's where you can make a big difference. And that's, of course, exactly like Empower is doing, World Mobile is doing, projects like Landana are doing. So, yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, I mean, what's astounding is these interest rates, right, charged to kind of probably the less financially well-off sort of countries and populations. I mean, 50%, 25% for home loans, absolutely crazy, huh? So, Cardano Trees, do you want to contribute to that, or should we move on?
Yeah, no, I think that the Poa answer was pretty clear. I am from Argentina, and we have a lot of problems here too. I think, but I think Africa is a really good start. It's really had an enormous potential for apply Cardano to improve the people lives. I think because that it is a perfect selection for the beginning, but for sure the whole South America and other countries other zones are need Cardano for improve. For example, here in Argentina, the last year we have 100% inflation, and the economy is a total disaster, and we have a lot of problems, social problems. I think we can improve that using Cardano technology, but yeah, it takes time. But I think the selection of Africa as a first point to have impact is a really good decision.
I think,
If I
please,
can add, just to add, I think the assumption is often across the African continent that people are poor and people can't afford anything, and the countries ravaged by poverty, which to some extent is true. But I think more often than not, it's that the financial systems, governments often in many cases, and just the products that people are expected to purchase, financial products people are expected to purchase, don't reflect the realities of the continent. And so that's how you find a mortgage having an interest rate of 25% because it's trying to assume that everybody has 100% formal income, that income is stable, that takes into all these kind of considerations that we in developed markets take for granted. And so when you start to design a product, and I think Cardano and blockchain businesses have the ability to do this, can design a product that's actually suited to the market, you start to realize that people do have money to allocate to things that are important to them and to things that are of good value. And maybe just to use an example, our first set of homes, we just released the results of how those have been performing, the first set of home loans. And that looked at the period of October, November, and December, which is, as you can imagine, a challenging time financially. It's the end of the year, which is when most people will take their summer break in the Southern Hemisphere. It's Christmas or the religious holidays often, so there's additional spend there. And our tenants would have moved in for those first 3 months. And we all know when you move, there's additional hidden expenses. Despite that, we saw our tenants already contribute 5% towards owning their home. So on average, we've collected already 5% of the equity owned within the first 3 months of what is going to ultimately be a 10-year home loan. And that just goes to show that when the opportunity presents itself and there's a product that makes sense and it is sensitive to the realities of people's lives across the continent, then there is money to be allocated to these opportunities. So I think Cardano, I hope, I mean, obviously I can't say what was behind the foundation's view and IOG and Emerga and everyone, but I hope that what has motivated them is a keen insight that the technology can really make an impact and the products can really be designed to be fit for purpose. And ultimately, that means that the adoption will be accelerated because if anybody knows the story of M-Pesa in Kenya, the digital currency that was actually set up by a telco there, I mean, it's by no means decentralized, but how quickly M-Pesa has been picked up. I think something like 70% of Kenya's GDP goes through a effectively digital currency, not an official digital currency, just a digital currency, you can see that the continent is hungry for alternative solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, spot on with that one, right? So there's some very kind of important solutions that are not being really met via the real world, if you like, and blockchain and sort of the technology behind it and a little bit of creativity, I suppose, is kind of empowering people through that. And also, I think what you mentioned is very interesting, that the kind of impression of a continent like Africa, and as I won't mention who said it was a president of the country of Africa, who's hilarious. Yeah, so a continent like that is not impoverished, and in many ways, many human resources, a lot of wealth in there. People have money, as you said. It's just enabling them how to sort of, utilize it to the betterment of their own lives. Very interesting. Yeah, great. Thank you for that. Okay, let's we'll go to Raid for Ada for Good, actually, for the next one, I think. And it's like, obviously, doing these great things, we're all listening and thinking, well, it was really simple. Well, I'm sure it wasn't. I'm sure you all met with lots of challenges and, trying to achieve your objectives as a project, as a business, but also, trying to kind of, make these great contributions. What was the biggest challenges kind of in your way to actually do what you're doing, as a stake pool operator, and to say, well, actually, you know what, I'm going to give away some of this and then really kind of make a difference? What were the challenges in your way?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, well, I think if you have been a stake pool operator, then you know immediately what the answer to this question is, and it's always finding a way to getting delegation, because delegation is normally the only way, the only source of income for a stake pool. And since there are like 3,000 stake pools competing with each other, it's very hard to grow above a certain level that your stake pool can be sustainable. And even if you look at mission-driven pools, there are still hundreds of mission-driven pools. So that was our biggest challenge, like it is for many other stake pools. It took us like, I think, 6 to 8 months before we got above even a million ADA. But yeah, we succeeded. I can say we succeeded because our pool is pretty well saturated and very constant in that sense. So yeah, but that's the biggest challenge for all stake pools.
Wow, yeah, to actually be able to do it is you have to be able to sustain the project, obviously, before it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
And you
a
have to maintain your stake, so you can't just have a stake for a short time.
Absolutely. Thanks, Farid. Let's go to Cardano Trees on that for that one. What were your challenges sort of doing what you did, if there were any?
Yeah, there were some technical challenges that I think that wasn't the biggest challenges at that time. There was less tools at Cardano to create things, but we can do that great. But I think the most important challenge at that time was how to donate trees using cryptocurrencies. I think at that moment there is no NGO that accepts cryptocurrencies because we talked with Cardano Foundation and we was part of the Cardano Impact Challenge, which is very true. We can do that using that door, but we contact a lot of NGOs related to planting trees, and at that moment there wasn't a way to donate in crypto. We need to transform to dollars, make transfers bank to bank to dollars, and that creates a lot of problem. But we can solve planting trees through Berry Tree at the moment. But now I already know that, for example, One Tree Planted have received donations in cryptos and other NGOs too. But I think at that moment that was the most important challenge to really try to have the real trees planted in the real world.
Absolutely. I mean, trees aren't very easy to plant, and obviously, from what you're saying, is actually getting the money to goes. When you're paying in obviously crypto and ADA, it's not as simple as everyone probably in who's not involved in it probably understands it. So absolutely. Let's go to Empower for that, Greg.
I'm going to steal a line from Bruno, who I think is on this call, but he summed it up well when he said, "There's no test net in RealFi." And so, we can't just write a few lines of code and check that things are working and then push it live to mainnet. We're ultimately financing the construction of homes. And so that means that, we need to take things incrementally, test how funds can flow in and out of the country. I mean, Mozambique has virtually no uh, has no crypto exchanges and no real active crypto community. So all of our funds that we moved in had to be done peer to peer, which in itself was a challenge. But then also just ensuring that we build in homes that tenants want. We as a project are keen to be building with environmentally sustainable products or solutions. We built 2 homes using sustainable wood, which actually weren't well received by the community for a bunch of cultural reasons and concerns that they had. We've built Africa's first affordable hempcrete house. So we're exploring how that's working as a building material. And all of these things, require trial and error. So yeah, it's not as simple as just send money into the country, build some homes, and have an impact. It really is about being sensitive to local solutions, local markets, and from a crypto perspective, a lot of education, at least in Mozambique. I think it will be easier in Nigeria, where there's a much stronger crypto ecosystem. Some of the other markets we're looking at, South Africa, again, is a much stronger crypto ecosystem. But it's been good to learn those lessons, in a more challenging environment, and then make it easier rather than the reverse.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it seems the challenge of kind of payment, but I mean, with the contributions, for instance, your projects are making to real people who might not even have a idea of what crypto is, and they see the impact that a project is making through crypto. Do you think that's going to have a very big, if you like, renaissance in thinking of normal people about crypto and inspire them to maybe start exchanges in Mozambique and other countries? Do you think this can actually change people's mindsets towards crypto and see that how it's actually impacting their lives rather than the banks and the central and real fi kind of organizations that are kind of not helping?
I mean, I think so. Look, there's sadly, for good reason, a lot of mistrust in institutions and in governments across the African continent, and so people are always keen to take, you know, matters into their own hands. Sometimes for good, sometimes not for good. But there's that culture already. So I think an idea of a decentralized, uh, you know, kind of asset that you own yourself would definitely capture people's imaginations. I also think that, you know, if you connect with the correct people, even within, you know, government, the right people are desperate to make a change. And Beira, where we built our homes, that is a province run by the official opposition of Mozambique, and the mayor of Beira, responsible for running the province, you know, I don't know if he fully understands the power of blockchain, but he's seen the homes we've delivered. He's seen the potential that this technology can have. And there's an article on our Medium page where he flew out here to the Netherlands to do the signing, to kind of commit to this next set of 25,000 homes. And it's amazing to see government embrace blockchain and the potential it can have to solve issues rather than what we're seeing elsewhere in the world, where it's seen as you know, this old school way of thinking, that it's only used for crime and for nefarious means and bad actors, etc. And I think that's what fills us with a lot of hope is that in a lot of maybe developing markets where they are desperate for a solution, they're open to trying almost anything and give blockchain technology and Web3 a chance. and they'll be rewarded for that. And I fear that some of the either environments where they're so keen to hold on to this old school way of thinking, they might be left behind, and maybe we'll realize that not maybe not too late, but definitely later than is ideal, what is actually possible with this technology.
Interesting perspective. I mean, yeah, maybe this is a way that these countries that really kind of aren't getting what they need from, if you like, sort of traditional institutions are seeing the benefits, as you said, governments and government officials even seeing kind of how it's benefiting their communities, will become kind of ambassadors of crypto as a whole, Cardano, etc. And, maybe there's a reason for this, and suddenly we'll see an explosion in those areas where it makes life so much better for the populations. Thank you. Last question, guys. One more, and this is a really open question to anyone who wants to take it. So, what other areas do you think in this world need attention, and really kind of Cardano or just generally blockchain technology can really kind of contribute to? So, just one area you think that really can be helped in, maybe the areas you're already in, like Africa or Argentina or anywhere in the world. But what could be addressed that's not being addressed at the moment? And this is a really open question. Just go ahead and shoot anyone who wants to speak.
Yeah, I can try to take a step on that. I think what Cardano could do in the future, and hopefully not too long in the future, is to be of help in a to become a governance model someday for countries or certain governments, because I see the world becoming more and more decentralized. I hope we are going to be more and more decentralized. And the thing with governments and governance is that it's often centralized. There are laws, but often those laws, well, there are always people who are making the decisions. And the great thing about Cardano and possible future governance model is that it could be code. So we can create a law that is governed by code, which is immutable and is non-corruptible. And yeah, that would be really great if Cardano could play a role in that. And even if it is in certain important parts like elections, for example. There are many countries where elections are, well, kind of iffy. And when you use systems like blockchain, then you can solve huge problems, in my opinion.
Very interesting area. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, elections. Politicians probably don't want that to happen, right? It's too immutable for them. But yeah, no, very good. Guys, any other thoughts on that? Thinking out of box, what else could really kind of be helped with blockchain technology and maybe Cardano itself?
Yeah, I mean, I can take a stab at it. I mean, the obvious one is financial inclusion. So much of at least the African continent remains unbanked, and there's so much that leads to that. I mean, we were recently interviewing somebody in Mozambique for a video that we were doing, and he explained how in the last cyclone his house got flooded, his ID got damaged, and as a result, and the government's ineffective at being able to produce a replacement ID for him, and so now he's cut off from so much. He can't go and collect the aid that was meant to be allocated to him. You know, he can't go and open a bank account. He can't. I mean, all of us know if we don't have government issued IDs, how difficult our life could be. And if you just think about how something like a digital identity could now be recorded on chain, could be done in a mutable way, could be done in a decentralized way, how much could then be associated with that digital identity, and how many more services can be offered, whether it be loans, bank accounts, you know, contracts for things like mobile phones, which are so important to the continent. So I think, you know, the digital identity that and a zero knowledge digital identity is so would be so valuable, and hopefully something that the Cardano ecosystem can provide.
Spot on. I mean, I think in any country you lose your ID. Some countries are absolutely terrible. You kind of lose who you are for a long time, and in even some advanced countries, you lose your national identity or something. You can't recover it very easily. But I mean, that's really what you just said is absolute a no-brainer, isn't it? It should all be on there, and it's always there, and never gets lost, and you don't have to look for it. And brilliant one, yeah. Cardano trees. What are you thinking on this area?
Yeah, I agree that they already said. I think in the short term is basically is credit loans and something like crowdfunding related to that. In midterm, I think the important thing will be decentralized identity for sure, because that permits a lot of things. I think in different countries, and for sure in the long term, I think the impact of blockchain in government and the way they manage everything, the transparency, and that would be amazing for countries like mine. But yeah, I think that will be really difficult because it's against the interest of some politicians. But for sure that we will try to push that, and I really expect to see that in the future will be really amazing.
Yeah, looking at governance, I mean, that's interesting, isn't it? I was actually thinking about this and discussing with someone. This is on a personal note, absolutely. And wouldn't it be interesting to have countries run as DAOs, and they're not going to let it go like that, but they're not going to let it happen, like that. But realistically, I mean, I can see one day, hopefully, very optimistic, and countries will be run democratically, really by DAOs and on a blockchain that's for good. I mean, thank you guys. I mean, thank you for all those contributions. I think we're going to open up for questions from our listeners now. So anyone who's got a question, please just put a request in. I'll bring you up. We had a couple of requests, but I don't know what happened. I think we had Cardano community there. I know Uri Wallet, you're there. Thank you very much for being here, as well as all our other listeners. If you'd like to ask any questions or contribute or say anything, okay, it's Gaia Steak Pools. How's it going? What's your question?
Hey, I just wanted to say that I really appreciate everything you are all doing, WingRiders, Vahid, Cardano Trees, and Empower, for really stepping up and getting the space going and showcasing projects on Cardano that are making an impact in the real world, because this is what blockchain is all about, right? Actually changing our world for the better and kind of bringing to light projects that are doing that. So I appreciate that. And I just wanted to also mention a project that Climate Neutral Cardano has been working on for a while, if I could. So yeah, we are working on the CNC ALA ISPO. It was a project that we started after working on the Cardano Forest project with Veritree. We were looking for a new kind of project to fund after that as a group, and a charity reached out to the Climate Neutral Cardano group, Tedikasa Ala. They're from Madagascar, and they were looking to plant 100,000 trees in Madagascar as part of a permaculture reforestation project. Unfortunately, Veritree wasn't able to help them at the time, but we decided that this could be something as a group that Climate Neutral Cardano could actually take on. So we did our own research on the charity and verified them and made sure that they were actual registered NGO. They actually had some pilot project work that was funded through the French government, because there's like a relationship between Madagascar and France. The people who run Tedikasa Ala, they have family in Madagascar, and some of them live in France as well. So that's how that kind of connection worked. But the work that they had done was really good, and so we started funding them and started working on an ISPO project to try and get more attention, get more pools on board, so that we could hopefully reach this goal of 100,000 trees funded. So that is still ongoing. The ISPO did launch, and we'll be running for another roughly 2 months. So basically how that works is all the participating pools, we currently have 25 pools participating. They donate 85 ADA from the first block of every epoch, and that goes directly to Teddy Casa Ala's wallet, which we helped them onboard. It was actually a difficult process. So, talking about connecting countries who aren't connected financially, Madagascar doesn't have very many ways of actually connecting to cryptocurrency. So, the only way we could get funding, like converting ADA to fiat, was to actually have them loaded onto a Binance card, and then they could use that card because it was connected to the Visa network to be able to spend in Madagascar. So that is definitely a challenge that has to still be worked on and overcome, probably globally. But at least we're able to get something set up for them. So they're working on the project right now. One of the benefits we found of being connected directly to a charity is that we can get better feedback. The group sent a drone down to Madagascar, so they're able to take really good footage of the project. So we have lots of video, lots of photographs, and we're doing a similar kind of thing with data reporting. So we're recording all of the project data, like number of trees planted, hours worked, types of trees planted, onto milestone NFTs, and those are able to be claimed every month. So if you go to our Climate Neutral Cardano website, climateneutralcardano.org, there's a section for the ISPO, and it has all the details there. So the dashboard of all of the reporting. If you go to NFTs, it'll take you to the NFT claim portal, which Anvil Development Agency made for us. So that's where you can see the data recorded milestones there. And delegators who delegate to our pools, because that is a challenge that Vahid mentioned. They'll get CNC ALA tokens, which can then be used to claim partner NFTs as well at the end of the ISPO. So we had 4 really great NFT projects partner with us. So those are Cardano Proxies, Earth Natives, Yummy Universe, and Mada's Lemur. And so at the end of the ISPO, delegates will be able to claim NFTs that have been donated from these projects, proportional to amount of CNC tokens they hold at a snapshot. So one way of rewarding delegators for doing good, and yeah, we're just really hoping to get more attention and get the project fully funded. So I hope this was helpful.
That's great. Yeah, thank you very much. Just shows, a lot of stake pools out there doing their bits basically for, the betterment of the world. Thank you very much. So let's go to Block Jock Cardanian.
Hey guys. So first off, Wing, I want to thank you for hosting the space and bringing these projects to the forefront. And Ada for Good and Impala and Cardano Trees. We know from people who've been here for a while, we know just how much and how hard you've worked to get where you're at, and the success that you've had so far. We absolutely applaud. And what I'm curious is, because we were talking a little bit about kind of some of the negativity that's going on in the US where I live surrounding cryptocurrencies and the narrative that's currently being played out. And it feels as though if there were a more concerted effort from those of us who are actually doing something impactful now, right this second, in different countries, that there would be a little less to complain about and a little more positivity to talk about having to do with crypto. And I'm curious as to, have any of you thought about, working with or getting involved with certain groups that they're nonprofits usually, that are petitioning or lobbying in at our capital, surrounding some of the narrative and just bringing this to the forefront, being brought into committee, maybe into a bill somewhere, something along those lines, where it actually gets some national attention. I'm just curious if you guys thought about that in any way, or even if it's a good idea right now.
Yeah, so I mean, look, it's not something our team is primarily based in Europe, but many of us having roots in the African continent. So it's actually not something we've explored per se. I think, it's a good idea. I mean, obviously, the narrative that often gets shared is all the negatives of blockchain. You know, the Lunas and the FTXs and the millions and billions that are lost by retail investors, and that completely overshadows all the positive that's been unlocked and achieved. And that's maybe also a product of, you know, bad news sells better than good news. And obviously, something like an FTX collapsing with billions being lost is much more exciting than, you know, a couple of homes being built somewhere off in deepest darkest Africa. But yeah, I think it's more a case of we have a lot to do, a lot of challenges to overcome. And while something like that may be a long-term valuable, I think we're really focused on delivering a product that will have meaningful impact and maybe having even more success to equip somebody like you've mentioned in their fight for what is possible with blockchain. So yeah, maybe near the end of this year, for example, with some of what we have planned in both our second development in Beira and Nigeria and some of the other projects, maybe then it will be a bit more impactful if we did partner with somebody like that. So it's not off the table, but not something that is a focus of ours right now, sadly.
I just think that what we plan for now, what we work and make connections with now within groups that are in the U.S. and Europe and things like that that are pushing these ideas that we can empower others to help themselves. As they say, teach a man to fish and he'll fish forever. Give a man a fish and they'll only be able to eat for one day, right? And I think there's so many nonprofit groups out there that are have that same ethos that if you aligned with them in the traditional markets, that in some way people wouldn't even know that they're actually helping a blockchain tech company. They're just helping people, right? And I think that's really where we need to move as the narrative for crypto right now is a little bit sour. Some people might sign on to that, so it might be helpful. And then once we get into the bull market, it gets a lot easier, right?
Yeah, to that point, I mean, we're having some pretty advanced conversations with impact investors, you know, based globally, and obviously some of them in the States. And the advantage is, given their size, they usually fall into the accredited investor space. And it's it's an interesting journey because they're intrigued by what we're doing, they're intrigued by the success to date and the technology that we're deploying, some of which is blockchain and some of it isn't. But it's really kind of slowly taking them on the journey. And where we were 12, 18 months ago in these conversations where they heard the word blockchain and they heard the word Web3 and they just immediately, you know, were skeptical and reluctant to speak to us. We're slowly starting to see a change and a thawing of that approach, and people starting to say, "Well, explain to us a bit more about this and how are you doing it?" And you know, it's for me, I always get a bit of whiplash. I'll see some of the developments happening in the broader ecosystem, some of the conversations that are being had, and I think to myself, "Wow, we've moved so far in mass adoption for blockchain." And then you'll go and look at the news and look at Twitter and everything and think, oh wow, maybe this is the end. So it really depends on how much you zoom in. When we do zoom out and we look at the kinds of conversations, the kind of partners who are interested in the technology that we're deploying, I think we're long-term bullish about uh, mass adoption and real institutional adoption. And our hope is, of course, that if we can get one strong institutional partner to you know commit to a meaningful pilot, that through delivering on that as well as the connections they might have, we can start to really make bigger waves on the impact that is possible. But yeah, um, people are still maybe reluctant to be too public about trying out this new technology until they've actually seen it work, because nobody wants to be the the partner that partnered with somebody and then lost a bunch of money to a crypto scam, right? And that's still
Right.
unfortunately sometimes the
Makes
mindset that people go into these things with.
Makes perfect sense, and I want to just make sure everybody knows that there is hope on the horizon. Have faith in what you're doing. You know, keep your head down and keep working, and it will get better. 23 years worth of running a business. I know sometimes it's been very difficult, but at the same time, I just kept pushing through. I made it to the other side, and I've reaped the success from it. So, those of you who are doing that, I applaud you, and congratulations on everything you've done so far. And look forward to seeing your success into the future here.
Thank you very much, Blockjug, for stimulating that discussion. Fantastic. And I think we'll go to our last question from SK.
Hey, first of all, thank you for hosting the space. Love WingRiders. Yori Wallet, I'm a user. Again, thank you also for the work you've done. I have 3 questions, if that's okay. The first question is, as we're kind of looking at with the banking crisis in the United States, I think there's going to be a push moving towards precious metals, perhaps gold, platinum, silver. I didn't know if there was any intention of doing some kind of a stable coin backed by a precious metal. I'm a big fan of Cody, and I know they're kind of working towards those kind of models. I was just kind of curious your thoughts on that. Second would be digital identity in the United States. You know, immigration is a big controversy, and I was just kind of wondering how digital identity would help people moving seamlessly across borders without creating a lot of the drama kind of thing. And then my third question is, I live in a very strong agricultural area in the United States. I live in Nebraska. Out here, you know, acreage goes by 1,000 acres at a pop. And I was just kind of curious, real world usage for agriculture with Cardano. I know Charles Hoskinson is a big fan of, you know, raising bison in Wyoming. I'm not that far west, but just kind of curious how farming could be disrupted with blockchain technology. Thank you.
So I'm not sure if I'm in a good position to answer question 1 or 2, but I could talk maybe to some extent to question 3. I have seen projects use blockchain in similar structures to what we've used to help finance agriculture. Typically, of course, given what our focus is, it's very much smallhold farmers or subsistence farmers, or helping them to fully realize the value in their crops, and that can be anything from giving them better access to markets, to being able to better contribute their goods to a larger holding, and maybe realize the full potential of their crop, but also with a bit of funding. Again, a bit out of my depth here, but I do know that in a lot of farming applications, you know, you need capital for short periods of time to help harvest and get things to market, and then you need almost like bridge financing. And as you can imagine, in underserviced developed markets, the interest rates on those can be exorbitant. I mean, if you're getting 25% on a home loan, you can imagine what it is for something like a bridge financing for agriculture. Sometimes even, you know, the funds needed to plant crops can be placed at exorbitant rates. So, and of course, the risk then, who helps to underwrite that risk and who helps to bear the risk, because farming is a risky business. And so I think models similar to what we've done could potentially be applied there, where, you know, we tap into impact investing, we use some token for collateralization. Our black paper really talks about how we've unlocked capital using the Cardano blockchain, and collateralization, etc. You can find out more at empower.io/black paper, but maybe some of that could be adapted to an agricultural setting. There's one project I think I've seen on Cello, but I can't recall their name. They're doing something in that space, and I think they're doing it in South America. So that might be something you could look at. But that's probably the only one of the questions that I think I can really comment on. I think there's like a Paxos issued gold stable coin, but gold backed stable coin, I think. But again, yeah, don't take my word on that. But maybe something to go look into as well.
Thanks, there, great. If you just want to, just repeat. I think the second question was about digital identity, right?
Right. Yeah. My second question is, I think that as we're seeing the world get smaller, and I think you're going to see eventually digital passports. I think medical records being digitized and being carried with you is going to be huge. But I was just kind of curious how you might envision blockchain technology being used to bring down some of the drama with immigration and make border crossings a lot smoother and seamless?
I think Vahid wanted to jump in on one of those questions.
Yeah, and maybe the first one. I mean, the first one is actually kind of interesting given the situation we have seen with USDC. Well, the most safe stable coin that was depegged because, of course, one of the banks that held a lot of reserves went down. Actually, it made it pretty clear for me that maybe, I mean, at least personally for me, maybe we have to just go for crypto. So, which means that if you go for crypto, you should not go for something that's backed by non-crypto, which is a stable coin backed by fiat and even backed by gold. I mean, who's holding the gold and how can you be sure that it is really gold and they have what? So there's always centralized risk with all these things. So if you ask me, I would prefer to go with the decentralized stable coins like we have with Cardano currently, Jet. That's working pretty well. It's backed by ADA. So, and I think actually I would like to see tomorrow, if you ask me, to have everything nominated in Bitcoin or in ADA and stop nominating USD.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I was writing a paper recently on stable coins, and I got this question that, but a fiat-backed one surely can't be, going down in any way because, they get audited, especially with the audits that USDC was having. It became the most credible one, really, where there was a lot of doubts about USDT. And, well, there you have it. The bank goes down and there you are. You get 20%, whatever it was, 16% depegging and a whole bunch of nasty stuff happening. So, yeah, crypto is the way forward, I think. Any takers for the second question about digital identity and passing borders easier?
Well, maybe just a little bit because it's a bit too difficult for me to judge the
Sure.
immigration part. But I think digital identities are the way of the future. I think it's going to happen. But what I think is exciting and also a bit worrying is, in the end, a centralized entity has to store your identity, right? And I'm very interested to see how this develops in a way that our identity is somehow no longer centrally stored. I mean, so it's called a decentralized identity, but in the end, your identity has to be checked by a centralized entity. Well, so when we can even maybe fix that, that would be great. But still, as you said, medical records and just going, for example, to an exchange and just signing your keys without giving all your personal details to everybody and all the websites you go to, that's perfect, of course.
Yeah, I mean, on the digital identity in healthcare, I think Immunify is a Cardano-based project that, if you aren't familiar with, might be interesting to go look at. They're doing some interesting stuff again with medical records, collecting that data, and so yeah, I can't again speak to immigration, but that's a project that I'm aware of that's doing interesting work in the healthcare space.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to answer. Because I believe Hispanic millennials are going to be the savior of the United States with immigration. It's just a question of how to integrate them in. I appreciate that.
Fantastic. I suppose all that's left is to thank our panel. Thank you very much for your contributions on such an important subject that really should get more coverage, I think, within the space. Thank you for our listeners who came up to ask questions and everyone else who's listening now and going to be listening later. Thank you very much and goodbye and good night, good morning, and wherever you are. See ya.